Marcus believed in control. He wasn't the kind of man who whispered sweet nothings or showered his girlfriend with unconditional love. He was the kind who measured his affection in rules, boundaries, and authority. In his world, being a man meant dominance, and being a woman meant compliance. That was the dynamic he prided himself on maintaining with Serena. To Marcus, their relationship was proof that he was the prize, and Serena was lucky to have him. On a humid Saturday morning in Lagos, Marcus sat at the edge of Serena's king-sized bed, scrolling on his phone while sipping an imported energy drink. His brows furrowed as he stared at a series of notifications, transactions from the shared card he had insisted Serena use for orderliness. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. What is all this nonsense? He muttered to himself. He slammed the can onto the bedside table, startling Serena awake. She stretched lazily, her silk bonnet slipping slightly as she blinked at him. "What's wrong with you this morning?" she asked in a soft, drowsy tone. Marcus turned to her sharply. "What's wrong with me? That's what you're asking. Serena, do you know how much money you blew through this week alone?" Serena sat up, pulling the sheets around her. She didn't look guilty, only confused. "Marcus, I bought a few things. Groceries, a new set of shoes, and some books. Nothing extravagant." "Nothing extravagant." He laughed, a short, sharp bark that carried no humor. "You spent 300,000 naira in 1 week, Serena. Do you think money grows on trees?" She tilted her head, studying him. His voice had that tone again, the one that carried both arrogance and insecurity. "Marcus," she said calmly, "it's not like I'm careless. Everything I bought was useful. Besides, I thought we agreed the card was for daily needs." He sneered. "Daily needs? Shoes are daily needs. Books are daily needs. No, Serena. That's reckless spending. You have no discipline with money. You're spoiled." Serena took a deep breath, pressing her lips together. She could argue, but what was the point? Marcus thrived on conflict when he felt his control was threatened. Instead, she simply folded her hands in her lap and asked, "So, what are you saying?" Marcus straightened, his chest puffing as though he were about to make a grand proclamation. "What I'm saying," he said slowly, savoring the words, "is that you need to learn a lesson. Starting today, I'm cutting off your access to that credit card. No more swiping. No more reckless shopping. If you need something, you come to me. I'll decide if it's necessary. That's how a proper relationship works. A man should provide, but a woman should submit. You've had too much freedom, Serena. It's time to remind you who's in charge here." He leaned back with a smug smile, waiting for her reaction, perhaps tears, or anger, or desperate pleading. That's what fueled his ego, seeing her bend, seeing her feel small. But Serena didn't flinch. She didn't argue, cry, or even look surprised. Instead, she adjusted the strap of her satin nightgown and met his eyes with a serene, almost unreadable expression. "Okay, Marcus," she said softly. Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "Okay, that's all you have to say?" "Yes, if that's what you want," Serena replied. Her tone was calm, almost detached. She slid out of bed, walked to her wardrobe, and began choosing her outfit for the day, without another word. For Marcus, the lack of resistance was baffling. He had expected a fight, a protest, maybe even begging. But her compliance only boosted his pride. In his mind, this was proof of his dominance. "Good," he said, standing tall. "This is for your own good, Serena. One day you'll thank me for teaching you discipline." She gave a faint smile as she slipped into a white blouse and tailored trousers. "Maybe," she murmured. What Marcus didn't know, what his arrogance blinded him from noticing, was that Serena wasn't agreeing out of weakness. She wasn't submitting because she felt powerless. She was silent because she didn't need to argue. The truth was, she had access to more wealth than Marcus could ever dream of. The credit card he had cut off was pocket change compared to her reality. What Marcus thought was his control was, in fact, a game she allowed him to play. As she buttoned her blouse, Serena recalled the countless times she had quietly funded Marcus's luxuries. The designer sneakers he flaunted, the expensive liquor he drank with his friends, The rented cars he paraded as his own. He had no idea that all of it had been made possible because of her, not just as his girlfriend, but as the silent force behind the luxury brand that kept his world spinning. But she wouldn't reveal that. Not yet. Later that day, Marcus was on the phone with his friend Tund, boasting about his bold move. "Bro, you should have seen her face," Marcus bragged as he lounged in the living room, his feet up on Serena's glass coffee table. She tried to act calm, but I know she felt it. Cutting off that card was the best decision I've made. These women think they can just spend anyhow. I showed her who runs this relationship. Tund chuckled on the other end. "Marcus, you're too much. But are you sure that won't backfire? Some girls don't like that kind of control." "Backfire? Please." Marcus scoffed. "She's lucky to even be with me. Serena needs me more than I need her. She has no ambition, no sense of responsibility. Without me, she wouldn't last a week." Serena, who had just entered the room with a glass of water, heard every word. She paused, her face unreadable as she set the glass down on the dining table. Marcus, oblivious, continued his call. "Yes, my guy, I'm serious. Women like her need structure. And guess what? I'm the structure. Without me, she'd be lost." Serena turned and walked to her study, closing the door quietly behind her. Alone in the room, she sat at her sleek mahogany desk and opened her laptop. The screen lit up with dashboards, financial reports, and email threads addressed to her under her formal business title, Serena Adeyemi, Chief Executive Officer, Aurelia Lux Holdings, the very same company that sponsored Marcus's lifestyle. She stared at the screen for a long moment, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Marcus thought he had taught her a lesson, but Serena knew better. If anyone was about to be taught a lesson, it was him. Over the next few days, Marcus carried himself with an exaggerated air of authority. He started dictating little things, what Serena should wear, when she should go out, even how much time she should spend on her phone. Every time she responded with her usual calm nod, his ego swelled further. One evening, as they dressed for dinner with his friends, Marcus looked her over critically. "That dress is too much," he said, frowning at her emerald gown. "You're trying too hard. Wear something simpler. Something that doesn't make it look like you're trying to outshine me." Serena raised a brow but said nothing. She simply changed into a sleek black jumpsuit, accessorizing with minimal jewelry. When they arrived at the restaurant, Marcus played his role to perfection. The doting provider, the man in control, the one who kept his woman in check. In front of his friends, he told stories that painted Serena as dependent, fragile, and helpless without him. "Women need guidance," Marcus declared at the table, swirling his wine. "Serena here, she used to spend recklessly, but I had to step in. Now she's learning. That's what a real man does, he leads." His friends laughed, nodding in approval. Serena smiled politely, sipping her water. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She let him bask in his false glory. But beneath her calm exterior, her mind was already working, preparing the storm Marcus never saw coming. And as the waiter brought the bill to their table, Marcus leaned back confidently and said, "Serena will handle it." That was the moment everything began to unravel. Serena had always been a woman of patience. In a world where men like Marcus strutted around with loud egos and louder opinions, she had learned the value of silence. Silence gave her space. Silence gave her clarity. And most importantly, silence gave her power. While Marcus believed she was subdued, she knew she was simply waiting for the right moment. The truth about her life was bigger than his pride could ever handle. After the dinner fiasco at the restaurant, where Marcus had pushed her into a corner by asking her to pay the bill with the very card he had cut off, Serena had quietly retrieved another card from her purse and solved the problem without a fuss. Her composure had left him slightly unsettled, though he brushed it off in front of his friends, joking that she always had backup. He had no idea what that backup truly meant. The following morning, sunlight streamed into Serena's spacious penthouse apartment. Marcus was in the living room, sprawled on the couch in boxer shorts, flipping channels and laughing at a comedy show. Serena, however, sat in her study again, sipping tea as her laptop glowed. Her assistant, Chica, appeared on a video call from their company's London office. "Madam, the Paris contract has been finalized," Chica reported, her voice professional. "They've agreed to expand our brand presence across their luxury malls, but they want you to sign off on the final terms." Serena smiled. "Good. Send it to my desk. I'll review it this afternoon." "Yes, ma'am. Also, the quarterly reports show a 30% growth in our African market. The Lagos office performed beyond projections." "That's excellent," Serena replied, glancing briefly at the door to ensure Marcus wasn't listening. "Prepare a press release. Quiet but strong. We don't need noise, just presence." Chica nodded before the call ended. Serena leaned back in her chair. Aurelia Lux Holdings was not just another company. It was an empire she had built carefully, brick by brick, silently investing in the luxury lifestyle that people like Marcus worshipped. The irony was delicious. Marcus strutted around in designer sneakers and flashy watches, all products under her umbrella company, yet he bragged about being the provider. She thought of the countless boardroom meetings, where men twice her age underestimated her, only for her to outmaneuver them with strategy and vision. She thought of the sacrifices, late nights, rejections, betrayals, that had shaped her journey. Now here she was, letting a man like Marcus lecture her about financial discipline. Just then, Marcus knocked on the door and walked in without waiting for a response. "There you are. Always glued to that laptop. What are you even doing all the time?" "Scrolling Instagram." Serena closed the laptop slowly, her expression neutral. "Something like that." Marcus smirked. "Anyway, I was thinking, tonight we should host some friends here. I'll order drinks, maybe get a DJ. Show them how we live. What do you think?" She raised a brow. "We. Of course," Marcus replied, grinning. "I'm the host. You're the lady of the house. Don't worry, I'll handle everything. You just make sure the place looks nice, and maybe wear something that makes me look good." Serena sipped her tea, hiding the smile tugging at her lips. "All right, Marcus. Whatever makes you happy." As he left, humming proudly, she reopened her laptop and sent a message to Chica. "Push the Paris signing to tomorrow morning. I'll be occupied tonight." By evening, the apartment buzzed with music and laughter. Marcus's friends filled the space, sipping champagne and taking selfies against Serena's floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus basked in the attention, pouring drinks and telling exaggerated stories about his supposed business ventures. "Bro, you're really living the life," one of his friends said, clinking glasses with him. "You already know," Marcus replied smugly. "It's all about discipline, focus, and control. Look at Serena, beautiful, loyal, and learning to be responsible because of me." Serena, sitting quietly on the couch, merely nodded. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even offended anymore. She was simply observing, as though Marcus were a child performing tricks for attention. Halfway through the night, Marcus decided to show off even more. He pulled Serena to the center of the room and announced, "Gentlemen, this is what it means to be a real man. Your woman doesn't move unless you guide her. She doesn't spend unless you approve. I had to cut off her credit card last week because she was being reckless. But look at her now, peaceful, disciplined. Isn't that right, baby?" The room erupted in laughter and whistles. All eyes turned to Serena. She could have exposed him right there. She could have said one sentence, "I own the company that produces the champagne you're drinking," and silenced the entire room. But she didn't. She simply smiled faintly and said, "If you say so, Marcus." His friends cheered, clapping him on the back. Marcus beamed with pride, mistaking her restraint for submission. Later that night, after everyone had left and Marcus snored loudly in bed, Serena stood by the window overlooking the city. Her phone buzzed with a message from the CFO. Reminder: tomorrow's board meeting at headquarters. Major decisions on ambassador contracts will be finalized. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Marcus had no idea that his ambassador deal, the very one that funded his fake lifestyle, was about to cross her desk. The next morning, Marcus strutted around the apartment in his silk robe, checking his reflection in every surface. "I have a meeting at Aurelia Lux headquarters today," he announced grandly. "They're renewing my contract as brand ambassador. It's gonna be a big deal. I might even get more perks this time." Serena, dressed in a sleek navy suit, adjusted her earrings in the mirror. "Aurelia Lux, you say?" "Yes," Marcus replied, puffing his chest. "That's the biggest luxury company in Africa right now. Everyone wants a piece of them, but not everyone gets it. Me, I'm one of their chosen few." Serena turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Congratulations, Marcus. That's impressive." He grinned, missing the subtle irony in her tone. "You should be proud. Not every man can pull that off. With me, you'll never have to worry about a thing." She picked up her handbag, her phone tucked neatly inside. "Of course, Marcus. Good luck at your meeting." As he left the apartment, Serena followed shortly after, heading to the same destination, but with an entirely different role to play. At Aurelia Lux headquarters, Marcus walked into the gleaming lobby, nodding at the staff as though he owned the place. He wore a designer suit, adjusted his cufflinks, and smirked at his reflection in the marble walls. "Today's the day," he whispered to himself. Meanwhile, Serena arrived through the executive entrance, escorted by her personal assistant. The staff greeted her respectfully, bowing their heads. "Good morning, Ms. Adeyemi." She walked with quiet authority, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. In the boardroom upstairs, executives waited for her arrival, documents neatly arranged for her review. Marcus, however, sat in the reception area, bragging loudly to a junior employee about how important he was. "I'm one of their biggest ambassadors, you know. These deals don't just fall from the sky. It takes class, presence, and connections." The employee nodded politely, hiding their amusement. They knew exactly who Serena was. They also knew exactly what was about to happen. When the elevator doors opened and Serena stepped out in her tailored suit, every staff member straightened. "Good morning, Ms. Adeyemi," they greeted in unison. Marcus froze. He turned, confusion washing over his face as he watched Serena walk past him with the poise of a queen. She didn't glance at him, didn't acknowledge him. She simply entered the boardroom, where her seat at the head of the table awaited. For the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of unease. Marcus was a man intoxicated by his own reflection. He had spent years perfecting the art of appearing powerful, even when the foundation of his so-called strength was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. His Instagram page was filled with staged luxury, airport lounge selfies, champagne bottles, designer clothes, and to his growing circle of friends and followers, he was that guy. The man who had everything. The man everyone envied. The truth, however, was that all of it came at Serena's quiet expense. She had been the silent financier of his curated image, allowing him to enjoy the illusion of being larger than life. But Marcus never understood that his spotlight existed only because she allowed it. That was why, on the evening of the infamous dinner, he carried himself with the swagger of a man who believed the world revolved around him. He had invited two of his closest friends, Tund and Charles, to a 5-star restaurant in Victoria Island. It wasn't just dinner, it was a performance. He needed witnesses for his latest display of dominance. "Gentlemen," Marcus said, spreading his arms wide as they walked into the golden-lit dining hall. "Prepare yourselves. Tonight, you dine like kings. With me, you never experience less than the best." Tund, a lanky man with a mischievous grin, chuckled. "Marcus, you never change. Always ready to show off." Charles adjusted his tie and smirked. "At least he backs it up. Not everyone can live like this, you know." Serena walked silently beside Marcus, dressed in a fitted red dress that drew every eye in the room without being excessive. She exuded quiet elegance, her posture straight, her expression calm. While Marcus soaked in the stares of admiration, she carried herself with the grace of someone who didn't need validation. They were seated at a corner table overlooking the Lagos skyline. Marcus immediately took charge, ordering bottles of champagne and the most expensive dishes on the menu. His friends nodded approvingly, clinking glasses with him as though they were part of an exclusive club. Throughout the evening, Marcus bragged about his business connections, his supposed deals, and his lifestyle. Every so often, he gestured toward Serena as though she were an accessory to his success. "You see this," Marcus said, motioning at her with his glass. This is what happens when you know how to lead. A man provides, and his woman follows. Serena knows better than to step out of line these days. Isn't that right, baby? Serena smiled faintly and took a sip of her drink. If you say so, Marcus. His friends laughed, nodding. Marcus leaned back in his chair, basking in the illusion of superiority. He believed he had convinced them that he was the provider, the one in charge. But then came the bill. When the waiter, a young man in a crisp uniform, placed the sleek leather folder on the table, Marcus barely glanced at it. He leaned back, adjusting his cufflinks with exaggerated confidence. "My lady will handle it," he declared, gesturing toward Serena. The waiter nodded, placing the folder in front of her. Serena opened it without comment, her eyes scanning the total. It was an outrageous bill, as expected, but she didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and pulled out the silver credit card Marcus had cut off a week earlier. She placed it calmly on the tray and handed it to the waiter. Marcus smirked, looking at his friends as though he were the king of the world. "You see, that's discipline. She spends when I allow it. That's how you keep order." But a few moments later, the waiter returned, his expression apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, lowering his voice respectfully. "This card has been declined." The table fell silent. Serena remained calm, her expression unchanged. But Marcus froze, his smirk faltering. Tund and Charles exchanged glances, trying not to laugh. "What do you mean declined?" Marcus snapped, sitting up straight. The waiter cleared his throat. "I tried twice, sir. The transaction was not approved." Marcus's ears burned. He glanced at Serena, expecting her to look embarrassed, maybe even desperate. But she didn't. Instead, she looked at him with a serene gaze that unnerved him. "Marcus," she said softly, "this is the card you cut off, remember?" Her words were gentle, but they cut deeper than a blade. Tund covered his mouth, stifling laughter. Charles raised his brows, amused. Marcus scrambled for composure. Yes, of course. I meant to test her. You know, to see if she's disciplined now. It's all under control." He laughed awkwardly, waving his hand. "Bring another card, Serena." But Serena didn't move. She simply sat there, her eyes fixed on him with quiet authority. Marcus shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. When the silence became unbearable, Serena reached into her purse again and pulled out another card, this one black, sleek, and far more exclusive. She handed it to the waiter without ceremony. Within minutes, the bill was settled. The waiter returned, bowing slightly. "Thank you, ma'am." "Of course," Serena replied, her voice smooth. She tucked the card away and resumed sipping her drink as though nothing had happened. Marcus, however, was red-faced. His friends exchanged knowing glances, whispering under their breath. The illusion of his control had cracked, and he felt it. As they left the restaurant, Marcus tried to salvage his pride. "You see, gentlemen," he said, forcing a laugh. "That was just a little hiccup. Serena always has a backup plan. That's why she needs me, to keep her in check. Without me, she'd spend us into poverty." Tun smirked. "Sure, Marcus, if you say so." Charles chuckled. "Yeah, but from where I'm standing, it looks like Serena's the one keeping everything together." Marcus clenched his jaw, but said nothing. Back at the apartment, Marcus exploded. "What the hell was that, Serena?" he demanded, pacing the living room. "You embarrassed me in front of my friends." Serena calmly removed her earrings and placed them on the dresser. "I didn't embarrass you, Marcus. You did that yourself." His face twisted in anger. "Don't talk back to me. You should have told me you had another card ready. Instead, you made me look like a fool." She turned to face him, her eyes steady. "Marcus, you told me to use the card you cut off. You wanted to prove a point, remember?" He froze, unable to respond. She continued, her voice even. "I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I simply solved the problem. That's what adults do. But if your ego can't handle that, then maybe you need to ask yourself why." Her calmness infuriated him more than shouting ever could. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Serena sat on the bed, exhaling slowly. She wasn't angry. She wasn't hurt. She was simply resolved. Marcus's arrogance was reaching its peak, and soon enough, it would come crashing down under the weight of his own delusion. The next day, Marcus met up with his friends at a lounge. They teased him mercilessly about the restaurant incident. "Bro, I'm telling you," Tun said between laughs. "The way that waiter said declined. I thought you were going to faint." Charles added, "And Serena? She handled it like a queen. Didn't even blink. Meanwhile, you were sweating bullets." Marcus forced a laugh, but inside he was boiling. He couldn't stand being the butt of the joke. "Laugh all you want," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm still the one in control. Serena knows her place. Trust me." But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the image of Serena's calm eyes at the restaurant. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crept into his mind. Meanwhile, Serena returned to her office at Aurelia Lux. Her executives greeted her with respect, presenting her with updates on sponsorship contracts. As she flipped through the documents, her eyes landed on a familiar name, Marcus Obiora, Brand Ambassador Renewal. She smiled faintly, tapping her pen against the table. The decision was in her hands now, and Marcus had no idea. Serena had always believed that power didn't need to be loud. Power, real power, was calm, precise, and quietly unshakable. That was why, after the embarrassing dinner incident, where Marcus's illusion of control cracked, she didn't fight him. She didn't raise her voice or throw his arrogance back in his face. She responded with the same grace that had carried her through boardrooms full of men who doubted her, through negotiations where she'd been underestimated, and through every personal betrayal that had tried to break her. Calm was her weapon, and Marcus would learn that soon enough. The morning after the restaurant fiasco, Marcus strutted around their penthouse like nothing had happened. He whistled as he scrolled through his phone, posting selfies with captions like, "Real men lead, weak men follow." His friends had teased him relentlessly, but Marcus was determined to reframe the narrative. To him, image was everything. Reality didn't matter if he could control the perception. Serena watched him from the dining table as she ate her breakfast, oats with fruit, her laptop open beside her. Reports from Aurelia Lux flashed across the screen. She skimmed through profit margins, expansion plans, and an upcoming partnership deal in New York. Her mind was calm, focused, efficient. Marcus, on the other hand, was loud, restless, and oblivious. "You know, Serena," Marcus said suddenly, dropping onto the chair across from her. "Last night wasn't great, but don't worry. I smoothed it over with the boys. They understand what happened. No harm done." Serena looked up at him, her expression neutral. "I see. Yes," Marcus continued proudly. "They know I'm in charge. That waiter embarrassed us, but I won't let that happen again. From now on, we'll handle things differently. You'll ask me before you pull out a card, all right?" Serena closed her laptop gently. "Marcus," she said softly, "you insisted I use the card you cut off. I didn't argue. I simply did what you asked." "That's not the point," Marcus snapped. "The point is how it looked. Men like me can't afford to look weak. You have to understand that. When you're with me, my reputation is your responsibility." Serena stirred her tea slowly, then met his eyes with a calm gaze. "Your reputation is your responsibility, Marcus, not mine." He blinked, momentarily thrown off by her firmness. But rather than admit she was right, he scoffed and waved her off. "You don't get it. Women never get it. Anyway, I have bigger things to worry about. My brand contract is being renewed this week. Once that's signed, I'll be unstoppable. Everyone will see that I'm the face of Aurelia Lux." Serena's lips curved faintly, though her eyes betrayed nothing. "Congratulations in advance," she said, her voice smooth. That evening, Marcus insisted they attend another social outing, this time at a private lounge where industry influencers mingled. Serena dressed in an elegant black gown, understated but striking, while Marcus wore one of his many tailored suits, puffing with pride as he strutted through the entrance. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with money and status. Men in designer suits clinked glasses, women in sequin dresses posed for photos, and every conversation dripped with ambition. Marcus thrived in this environment. He shook hands, laughed loudly, and introduced Serena not as his partner, but as his lucky charm. At their table, Surrounded by his friends and a few acquaintances, Marcus launched into his usual performance. "You know what separates me from the rest?" he asked, sipping his champagne with exaggerated flair. "Discipline. Control. I don't let my woman run wild with money. I cut off her credit card last week to teach her a lesson, and guess what? She's calmer now. More obedient. That's what leadership looks like." The table erupted in laughter and applause. All eyes turned to Serena, waiting for her reaction. She smiled faintly, leaned forward, and said in a gentle tone, "Marcus is right about one thing. He values control. And I value peace. That's why we work, I suppose. He plays his role, and I play mine." The words were spoken softly, but their weight lingered. The men chuckled, misinterpreting her composure as submission, while a few women exchanged knowing glances, sensing something deeper. Marcus beamed, mistaking her calm for validation. As the night went on, Marcus grew bolder. He ordered expensive drinks for the entire table, boasting about how Aurelia Lux valued him so highly as an ambassador. "Do you know what it means to be the face of luxury?" he asked, puffing his chest. "It means access. It means exclusivity. It means being untouchable." One of the women at the table leaned toward Serena and whispered, "You're lucky to have him. Men like this don't come around often." Serena turned to her, her smile serene. "Or perhaps men like him only think they don't." Later that night, back at the apartment, Marcus continued to bask in his self-created glory. He paced the living room, recounting every compliment, every nod of approval, as though they were trophies. "You saw how they respected me, Serena? That's what it means to be a man. That's why I can't let you or anyone else make me look weak." Serena, seated on the couch with a book in hand, simply nodded. "If that's what you believe, Marcus." He frowned, sensing the lack of enthusiasm in her response. "You don't sound impressed." "I don't need to be impressed," she said calmly, turning a page. "I just need to live in peace." Her words disarmed him. He wanted to argue, but her composure made it impossible. He stormed into the bedroom, muttering about how women never understood men. Serena closed her book, exhaled softly, and walked to her study. There, in the quiet glow of her laptop, she opened the renewal contracts for Aurelia Lux ambassadors. And there it was, Marcus Obiora. His file sat in her inbox, awaiting her review. She read through the details, his excessive spending, his lack of professionalism, his shallow influence. The numbers spoke clearly. Marcus was more liability than asset. She closed the file with steady fingers. The time for calm responses was nearing its end. But for now, she would continue as she always did, quiet, composed, and in control. Because true power didn't announce itself. It revealed itself at the perfect moment. The next day, Marcus strutted into a cafe with Tund and Charles. They ordered lattes and settled into a corner booth, laughing loudly as they replayed the restaurant incident. "Man, I can't believe that card was declined," Tund teased, smirking. "Your face, Marcus. I wish I had recorded it." Marcus forced a laugh, waving dismissively. "That was nothing. Just a little glitch. Serena had another card, didn't she? That's the beauty of it. She listens when I guide her." Charles sipped his coffee. "Still, bro, you gotta admit, Serena handled it better than you. She didn't even flinch. She's something else." Marcus's jaw tightened. He hated the suggestion that Serena was stronger than him. "Don't get it twisted. She's calm because I keep her in line. Without me, she'd crumble." But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. He remembered the way Serena had looked at him at the restaurant, not with fear, not with submission, but with a serenity he couldn't explain. It unsettled him, though he buried the feeling quickly. At home that evening, Serena was preparing dinner when Marcus walked in, clearly irritated. "Tund and Charles are getting too comfortable," he muttered. "They think they can talk about you like you're some kind of queen who doesn't need me. I don't like it." Serena placed the pot on the stove and turned to face him, her expression calm. Maybe they're just noticing what's always been there. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" She smiled softly. "Nothing, Marcus. Eat. You'll feel better." He grumbled but sat at the table. Serena served him with the same grace she always had, her movements smooth, her voice steady. To Marcus, it looked like obedience. To Serena, it was strategy. Because calm was not weakness. It was the quiet before the storm. Marcus believed he was invincible. After all, hadn't he just proven himself at the lounge, boasting in front of his friends and basking in their laughter? Hadn't he secured their respect? To him, the restaurant fiasco was already buried under his carefully crafted narrative of control. But in reality, his empire of illusions was beginning to crumble. And Serena, calm as always, was letting the pieces fall where they may. The first domino fell when Marcus arrived at the airport for his usual weekend getaway. He had gotten used to breezing through terminals, his ambassador perks granting him business class upgrades and VIP lounge access. He strutted up to the counter, passport in hand, smiling at the attendant like a man who owned the skies. "Business class, as always," he said smoothly. But the attendant tapped at her keyboard, frowning. "I'm sorry, sir. It looks like your complimentary upgrade is no longer available." Marcus blinked. "What do you mean? I'm a premium ambassador with Aurelia Lux. I always fly business." The attendant gave him an apologetic look. "Your membership status has been adjusted. You still have a seat in economy." The word economy landed on Marcus's pride like a sledgehammer. He forced a laugh, trying to mask his discomfort. "There must be a mistake. Check again." She checked again. "No mistake, sir." Passengers behind him shifted impatiently, some recognizing him from social media. He felt the heat of their stares burning through his suit. Reluctantly, he accepted the boarding pass and walked away, muttering curses under his breath. For the first time in a long time, Marcus felt small. The second domino fell the following week at a fashion launch party. Marcus loved these events. Cameras flashing, influencers posing, it was his stage. He walked in with Serena on his arm, confident that his presence guaranteed attention. But something was off. The usual photographers who flocked to him barely glanced his way. Instead, their cameras clicked furiously at another man entering the venue, an upcoming actor recently announced as the new Aurelia Lux face for men's accessories. Marcus forced a smile, dragging Serena through the crowd. "Strange, isn't it? Nobody told me about him." Serena tilted her head, her eyes calm. "Maybe things are changing." "Not for me," Marcus replied firmly, though his voice lacked conviction. When he approached the bar for his usual VIP drink, the bartender gave him polite but firm nod. "Sorry, sir. Complimentary service is for active ambassadors only." Marcus's throat tightened. "What are you talking about? I've been an ambassador for years." The bartender shrugged. "Not anymore, apparently." Marcus glanced at Serena, expecting sympathy, but she simply sipped her champagne, her eyes betraying nothing. It unsettled him deeply. For the first time, he sensed the ground shifting beneath his feet. The third domino came days later, when Marcus showed off his prized watch to a group of friends. It was a sleek, limited edition timepiece, the kind that screamed wealth. "This beauty," Marcus bragged, "was gifted to me personally by Aurelia Lux. They know how to treat their ambassadors." Tund admired it, whistling. "That's impressive." But before Marcus could bask in the praise, another friend interrupted. "Funny, I read on Aurelia's site yesterday that their ambassador sponsorship program was being reviewed. Word is, some contracts are already canceled." Marcus froze, his smile stiff. "Not mine," he said quickly. "I'm one of their most valuable faces. They wouldn't dare." But doubt lingered. That night, alone in the bathroom, he stared at the watch. Suddenly, it didn't feel like a symbol of status. It felt like a ticking reminder that his privileges were slipping through his fingers. Serena, meanwhile, noticed every shift. She watched as Marcus's arrogance slowly gave way to frustration, then desperation. He became irritable, snapping at little things. "Why is the Wi-Fi so slow? Why didn't you remind me of my meeting? Why are you always so calm when everything's falling apart?" She never responded with anger. Instead, she offered him tea, served him dinner, and answered with measured words. Her calmness drove him mad. One night, he confronted her directly. "Serena, I don't understand you. Don't you see what's happening? My privileges, my image, it's all being attacked. And you sit there like it doesn't matter. She looked at him quietly. Marcus, maybe it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. His jaw dropped. What? How can you say that? Do you know who I am? She held his gaze. I know exactly who you are. Her tone was gentle, but the words sliced through his ego. He stormed out, slamming the door, while Serena returned to her laptop. On the screen was the final draft of Aurelia Lux's ambassador review report, with Marcus's termination letter attached. The domino effect grew louder the following weekend. Marcus had invited his friends to a luxury car unveiling, expecting to flaunt his usual VIP access. But when they reached the venue, the security guard stopped him at the door. Name. Marcus smirked. Marcus Obiora, brand ambassador. The guard scanned his list, then shook his head. Sorry, sir. You're not on the guest list. Marcus's smile faltered. What? That's impossible. Check again. I did. You're not listed. People behind him whispered, some recognizing his face. Tun gave him a nervous glance. Bro, maybe there's been a mix-up? Humiliated, Marcus pulled out his phone, dialing the Aurelia Lux liaison he used to brag about knowing personally. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Panic crept in. Finally, Serena stepped forward, her presence commanding as always. The guard recognized her instantly, bowing slightly. Good evening, ma'am. Right this way. Without hesitation, Serena walked in, leaving Marcus frozen at the door. His friends stared, bewildered. Wait, Serena. They know her. Marcus forced a laugh, trying to save face. Of course they know her. She's my +1. But deep down, he knew something had shifted permanently. That night, back at the apartment, Marcus exploded again. What the hell is going on? Why are my privileges disappearing? Why is everyone treating me like I'm nothing? Serena calmly set down her tea. Maybe because without those privileges, Marcus, you are nothing. His face twisted with rage. Don't you dare talk to me like that. She met his glare with serene composure. I'm not talking to you with anger. I'm telling you the truth. If your entire identity crumbles because a company changes its contract, then maybe you should ask yourself why. He was speechless. He wanted to shout, to assert control, but something about her calm gaze silenced him. He stormed into the bedroom again, slamming the door. Serena remained in the living room, sipping her tea slowly. The dominoes had fallen. His empire of illusions was collapsing. And soon, he would discover the full truth, that the woman he tried to control was the architect of his entire lifestyle. Marcus had always loved grand entrances. He thrived on the spectacle of people turning their heads when he walked into a room. For years, he convinced himself that those stares were admiration, respect, even envy. What he never understood was that admiration without substance is fragile. It collapses the moment truth arrives. By the time he decided to storm into Aurelia Lux headquarters, the illusions he'd lived on were already in ruins. He just didn't know how close he was to being stripped bare. It was Monday morning in Lagos, a humid day with clouds threatening rain. Marcus woke up restless. He had barely slept, tossing and turning as he replayed every humiliation of the past weeks. The declined card, the stripped airline upgrades, the party where bartenders ignored him, the car unveiling where security refused him entry. Each incident had chipped away at his pride, until all that was left was a desperate man clinging to an image he could no longer sustain. When Serena walked past him that morning, dressed in a navy blue suit with a laptop bag slung over her shoulder, Marcus watched her closely. She was calm as always, her steps steady, her aura unbothered. He hated that calmness now. It felt like mockery. Where are you going? He asked, his tone sharper than he intended. Work, she replied simply, slipping on her heels. Work? Since when do you actually work? You spend all day behind that laptop like it's a game. What do you even do? Serena paused briefly, then turned her gaze to him. Her eyes were steady, her voice gentle. You'll find out soon enough, Marcus. He frowned, confused. What's that supposed to mean? But she didn't answer. She picked up her bag and left the penthouse with the same grace she always carried, leaving Marcus with his growing insecurity. By noon, Marcus had had enough. He put on his sharpest suit, sprayed half a bottle of his most expensive cologne, and called Tund. "Bro, I'm going down to Aurelia Lux today. They've been disrespecting me, and I won't tolerate it. I'll speak to their executives directly. I'll remind them who I am." Tund hesitated. "Are you sure that's a good idea? If your contract really is in trouble, maybe you should wait." "No," Marcus interrupted, his voice firm. "I'm not waiting. Do you know who I am? I'm Marcus Obiora. I built my name, my image. They can't just cut me off. I'll handle this." With that, he hung up and marched out, his head high. Aurelia Lux headquarters was a glass fortress on Victoria Island, towering above the busy streets. Its sleek design reflected wealth and power, a symbol of the empire Serena had built from scratch. Marcus walked through the main doors as if he owned the place, ignoring the curious glances of the reception staff. "I'm here to see the executives," he announced loudly. "Tell them Marcus Obiora is here. Brand ambassador. They know me." The receptionist tapped quickly on her keyboard, her expression professional but unreadable. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" Marcus scoffed. "Appointment? I don't need an appointment. They know who I am. Call your manager now." She excused herself and made a discreet call. Within minutes, 2 staff members appeared. One of them, a man in a tailored suit, approached Marcus with a polite smile. "Mr. Obiora," he said carefully, "the board is currently in a meeting. You'll have to wait." "I'm not waiting," Marcus snapped. "This is my livelihood, my reputation. You think you can cut me off after everything I've done for this company? After I've represented your brand across Nigeria? I demand answers. Now." The staff exchanged nervous glances, but said nothing. They led him to a waiting area, a sleek lounge with leather chairs and minimalist decor. Marcus sat stiffly, fuming, rehearsing the speech he would deliver when he stormed into the boardroom. He imagined executives trembling as he reminded them of his influence, his reach, his so-called loyalty. But nothing could have prepared him for what came next. Upstairs, the boardroom was alive with quiet energy. Senior executives lined the long glass table, laptops open, papers neatly arranged. At the head of the table sat Serena, calm and composed, flipping through reports. Her navy blue suit fit perfectly, her natural hair styled elegantly, her presence commanding respect. She didn't need to raise her voice or wave her authority around. Everyone in that room already knew who she was. The CEO of Aurelia Lux Holdings, the architect of their empire. As she signed off on a contract, her assistant leaned close and whispered, "Ma'am, Marcus Obiora is here. He's demanding to see the board." Serena didn't look up immediately. She finished her signature, placed her pen down, and then lifted her gaze. Her voice was soft but firm. "Bring him in." Moments later, the boardroom doors opened. Marcus stormed in, chest puffed, eyes blazing with indignation. "This is outrageous," he barked. "You cut me off without explanation. My upgrades, my sponsorships, my access gone. Do you know who I am? I am the face of Aurelia Lux in Nigeria. And you dare treat me like this?" The room fell silent. The executives exchanged glances, some barely suppressing their smirks. Marcus, red-faced, turned toward the head of the table and froze. There was Serena, calm, unbothered, flipping through documents as though his presence meant nothing. "Serena," he stammered, What are you doing here?" She looked up, her expression serene. "Good afternoon, Marcus. Please have a seat." His jaw dropped. You work here." Her eyes softened, but her voice carried authority. "I don't just work here, Marcus. I run here. Welcome to my boardroom." The words hit him like a thunderclap. His knees weakened, his chest tightened. For the first time in his life, Marcus realized he wasn't the biggest man in the room. The silence was thick, broken only by the clicking of a pen from one of the executives. Marcus stumbled forward, his bravado crumbling. "Wait, what? You? CEO? That's impossible. You never said." Serena leaned back in her chair, folding her hands gracefully. "You never asked. You were too busy telling me who I should be, what I should do, and how I should live. You assumed because I didn't shout, I had nothing. You assumed silence meant weakness. You were wrong." Marcus's face flushed crimson. But all this time, you let me believe. I didn't let you believe anything, she interrupted calmly. You believed what you wanted. You believed you were in control. You believed you provided for me. In reality, Marcus, everything you flaunted came from me. The champagne, the watches, the flights, the access, all of it was Aurelia Lux. And Aurelia Lux is me. The executive sat quietly, watching the scene unfold. Some scribbled notes, others exchanged knowing looks. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally sputtered. But we're together. Doesn't that count for something? Serena's gaze was steady, her voice even. Respect counts for something. Integrity counts for something. Humility counts for something. But you chose arrogance, control, and disrespect. That's why your contract is being terminated. The words were final, decisive. A staff member slid a folder across the table toward Marcus. Inside was a formal termination letter, signed by Serena herself. His hands trembled as he opened it. He read the words, but couldn't process them. His world, his image, his carefully curated illusion, it was all slipping away. You can't do this, he whispered, his voice weak. Serena stood slowly, her presence towering even without raising her voice. I already have. The board has agreed unanimously. Your privileges, your title, your access, they're gone. Aurelia Lux no longer needs you, Marcus. And neither do I. The finality in her tone shattered what little pride he had left. He looked around the room, desperate for support, but found none. The executives avoided his gaze. To them, he was no longer an asset. He was irrelevant. Serena gathered her papers, signaling the end of the meeting. Gentlemen, thank you. That concludes our agenda for today. As the board members began to leave, Marcus stood frozen, still clutching the letter, his mouth dry, his heart pounding. Serena walked past him, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She paused briefly at his side and spoke in a low, calm voice only he could hear. You tried to teach me a lesson, Marcus, but the only lesson here is yours. Power isn't about control. It's about respect, and you lost mine a long time ago. With that, she walked out, her staff trailing behind her, leaving Marcus standing alone in the boardroom, humiliated and powerless. The boardroom air was still heavy after Serena left, but Marcus remained frozen in his chair. The termination letter sat before him like a death sentence, the official stamp of reality he could no longer escape. He could feel the weight of the executive stares, though none of them spoke. To them, this was business as usual, a contract terminated, a liability removed. But to Marcus, it was the collapse of the world he had built on lies, arrogance, and borrowed prestige. His face burned with shame as he finally stood, clutching the folder. He stumbled out of the room, past staff who no longer looked at him with admiration, but with thinly veiled amusement. Whispers followed him down the hall, and though he couldn't hear the words, he knew exactly what they were. That's him, the one who thought he owned the world, only to be owned by it. Meanwhile, Serena returned to her private office, her assistant close behind. The door closed softly behind her, and the calm she always carried settled over the room again. She sat at her desk, opening her laptop as though nothing monumental had just occurred. For her, this wasn't revenge, it was accountability. Marcus had disrespected her time and again, belittling her while living off the empire she created. Now he had finally been forced to face the truth. But Serena wasn't finished. Marcus's arrogance had always thrived in the shadows of his illusions, where only friends and followers saw him as the alpha. To truly end this cycle, the truth had to come to light where it mattered most, before the very people he used to impress. That opportunity came sooner than expected. Later that week, Aurelia Lux hosted a corporate gala at the Eco Hotel Convention Center. It was an event attended by executives, brand ambassadors, influencers, and media personalities, a stage where reputations were either cemented or destroyed. Marcus, despite the termination letter, arrived uninvited. He walked into the ballroom in a tailored tuxedo, his smile wide but forced, his eyes darting nervously. He needed to prove to himself, and to everyone else, that he was still relevant. But whispers followed him from the moment he entered. Word of his termination had spread faster than he anticipated. He saw former acquaintances glance his way, then turned back to their conversations, unimpressed. For the first time, he was no longer the center of attention. Serena arrived shortly after, escorted by her team. She wore a floor-length silver gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, her natural hair styled into a regal crown. Heads turned immediately, not just because of her beauty, but because of the aura she carried. She wasn't just part of the gala, she was the gala. Staff, executives, and media personalities all moved toward her, offering greetings and praise. Marcus watched from across the room, his fists clenching at his sides. In that moment, the gulf between them felt wider than ever. He had once thought of her as his woman, someone to control. Now, it was clear she had been the power all along. As the evening progressed, the host took the stage to thank guests and partners. Then came the highlight, the CEO's speech. When Serena's name was announced, the room erupted in applause. She walked gracefully to the podium, her silver gown catching the light, like a crown of its own. Her calm voice filled the ballroom. Thank you all for being here tonight. Aurelia Lux has always stood for excellence, innovation, and above all, integrity. We don't just build brands, we build trust. And trust requires accountability. Marcus felt his stomach twist. He knew, instinctively, where this was going. His pride urged him to leave, but his ego forced him to stay. Serena continued, her tone smooth but firm. In recent weeks, our company has reviewed ambassador contracts to ensure they align with our values. Some individuals have honored their roles with grace and professionalism. Others, unfortunately, have not. When arrogance, disrespect, and entitlement replace humility and responsibility, we must act. Because Aurelia Lux does not endorse character without substance. The room was silent, every ear tuned to her words. Serena's eyes swept across the audience, and for a moment, they landed directly on Marcus. His face burned as though a spotlight had been fixed on him. That is why, Serena concluded, we have terminated contracts with those who no longer reflect what Aurelia Lux stands for. Their privileges have been revoked, their titles removed. Tonight, I stand here not just as a leader, but as a woman who believes that respect is not negotiable. And to anyone who thinks control is power, remember, true power lies in integrity. The applause that followed was thunderous. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, raising glasses. Marcus sat stiffly in his chair, every clap echoing in his chest like a hammer. It wasn't just a speech. It was his public execution. After the applause died down, Serena left the stage and mingled with guests, her poise unshaken. Marcus, unable to bear the humiliation any longer, cornered her near the exit. His voice was low, strained with desperation. Serena, please. You didn't have to do this in front of everyone. She turned to face him, her eyes steady. Marcus, you did this to yourself. I only revealed the truth. You wanted the world to see you as a king, but you built your throne on lies. Now they see you as you really are. He swallowed hard, his pride collapsing. I can change. Just give me another chance. Don't throw me away like this. Serena's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. This was never about throwing you away. It was about teaching you a truth you refused to see. You tried to control me, Marcus, but you couldn't even control yourself. Respect is earned, not demanded. And love cannot exist without respect. Her words cut deeper than any public humiliation. For the first time, Marcus saw not the calm woman he believed was weak, but the powerful leader he had underestimated. She walked past him, her team close behind, leaving him standing alone in the glittering ballroom, surrounded by whispers, stripped of the image he had once clung to. That night, the final blow landed, not in anger or revenge, but in truth. Marcus's arrogance had destroyed him, and Serena, calm and composed, had shown the world what true power looked like. The morning after the gala, Marcus sat alone in his penthouse, staring blankly at the skyline. His tuxedo from the night before still hung loosely on his body, wrinkled and stained from spilled champagne. The apartment was unusually silent. No calls from friends, no invites to events, no notifications from fans singing his praises. The silence itself mocked him. It was the sound of a man who had lost everything that gave him value in the eyes of others. His phone buzzed once, and he leapt to grab it. For a brief second, he thought it might be a brand manager, a journalist, or perhaps Serena herself. But it was just a spam message offering him a loan. He laughed bitterly, throwing the phone onto the couch. The irony was cruel. He, who once flaunted wealth and privilege, now stared at offers for quick cash like an ordinary man struggling to make ends meet. The weight of the termination letter sat on the coffee table. He had read it 100 times, as though repetition might somehow change the words. But they were always the same. His contract terminated, privileges revoked, relationship severed. Signed with Serena's name at the bottom in neat, confident strokes. Marcus buried his face in his hands. He thought of the countless times he had mocked Serena, belittled her, called her reckless, spoiled, and incapable of survival without him. Yet here he was, crumbling without the very foundation she had built for him. His friend's words echoed in his mind. How calm Serena had been when the card declined. How effortlessly she handled humiliation that would have broken him. She had always known who she was. He had only pretended. Meanwhile, Serena sat in her office at Aurelia Lux headquarters, going through reports with her team. She was radiant, focused, and composed. The gala had been a success. Media outlets were already praising her speech, lauding her as a symbol of modern leadership, a woman who ran her empire with quiet strength. She barely thought of Marcus now. To her, he was just one of many lessons on her journey, a reminder of what arrogance without substance leads to. Her assistant, Chica, walked in with a stack of documents. "Ma'am, the press is still buzzing about last night. They're calling you the Queen of Integrity." Serena smiled faintly. "Titles don't matter. What matters is the message. Let them take that away." Chica nodded. "And Marcus?" Serena closed the file in front of her, her eyes steady. "Marcus has learned his lesson. That's enough." But Marcus hadn't learned yet, not fully. Later that week, he showed up at Aurelia Lux headquarters again. This time, he didn't storm in with bravado. He walked slowly, his shoulders slumped, his clothes less polished. He asked to see Serena, and surprisingly, she agreed. When he entered her office, he froze. She sat behind her mahogany desk, every inch the leader, her presence calm and commanding. He suddenly felt small, like a boy being summoned to the principal's office. "Serena," he began, his voice low, almost pleading. I came to apologize." She looked at him steadily, waiting. "I was wrong," he admitted, his eyes on the floor. "I thought control made me powerful. I thought cutting off your card, making decisions for you, that's what being a man was. But I see now, I was just insecure, and I took that out on you." Serena's gaze didn't soften immediately. She folded her hands and asked, "Why are you apologizing, Marcus? Because you lost your privileges? Or because you finally see the truth?" He swallowed hard. "Both. But mostly because I see the truth now. You never needed me. I needed you. And instead of respecting you, I tried to diminish you. I'm sorry." For a long moment, Serena said nothing. The silence stretched, heavy but not hostile. Finally, she spoke, her voice even. "Marcus, respect isn't something you ask for after the damage is done. It's something you live by daily. You spent so long trying to make me kneel when all along, you were the one standing on borrowed ground." He winced at her words, but he knew she was right. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Marcus said quietly. "I just needed you to know that I see it now. The life I had, it wasn't mine. It was yours, and I took it for granted." Serena studied him for a moment longer, then leaned back in her chair. "Marcus, forgiveness isn't mine to give. That's something you'll have to find within yourself. But here's what I'll tell you. This doesn't have to be the end of you. You can still build something real. But it has to come from humility, not arrogance. Do you understand?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, I understand." Serena offered a faint smile, not out of affection, but out of closure. "Then take this as your clean slate. Not a second chance with me, Marcus. That chapter is closed. But a second chance with yourself. Don't waste it." Tears stung his eyes, though he quickly blinked them away. He stood, bowed his head slightly, and whispered, "Thank you, Serena." Then he left her office quietly, for the first time walking away without trying to make himself bigger than he was. Weeks later, the story of Marcus's downfall had become old news in Lagos society. The same people who once envied him now barely remembered him. His social media presence dwindled. His followers moved on to new idols. But in that obscurity, Marcus began to reflect. He picked up a regular job. Not glamorous, not loud, but honest. For the first time, he worked for his own bread, instead of living off someone else's empire. It was humbling. It was hard. But it was real. Serena, on the other hand, continued to rise. Her company expanded into 3 new markets. Her name featured in international business magazines. She was invited to speak at conferences, her calm leadership style becoming a model for others. She had never needed Marcus, and now the world knew it too. But Serena carried no bitterness. When people asked about Marcus, she only smiled and said, "Some lessons in life are expensive, but they're worth it." One evening, months later, Marcus saw Serena again, at an airport lounge this time. He wasn't in business class. He sat quietly in economy, waiting for his flight to Abuja for a work project. But as he looked across the glass walls, he saw Serena walking gracefully into the VIP lounge, her presence commanding the room. Their eyes met briefly. She gave him a polite nod, a gesture of acknowledgement, not animosity. He nodded back. In that small exchange, there was no anger, no bitterness, just the quiet understanding of 2 people whose paths had diverged. For Marcus, the lesson was finally complete. He had tried to control a woman who was never his to control. He had tried to play king in a kingdom he never built. And he had learned, painfully, that power without respect is nothing. Serena, meanwhile, walked on, her heels clicking softly, her calm smile unwavering. She had never needed Marcus to validate her worth. She had always been the architect of her own empire. And now, more than ever, the world knew it. The lesson was clear, for Marcus and for anyone watching. The woman he tried to humble had only proven she was the one who held his entire world together. And when she walked away, his world fell apart. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like, comment, and share. Also turn on the bell to get more of our videos. See you in the next story.